In this tutorial, we're going to look at how to create animated pie charts inside of After Effects that retain full editability over all the properties, as well as how to set it up to use inside of Premiere Pro without ever having to open up After Effects. It's going to be pretty fun. We're going to be using a lot of expressions, making robots do math for us, all kinds of fun stuff, so let's get right to it. Alright, so we're going to start with a new composition, Command N on the keyboard. I'm just going to make mine 1080 by 1080. I'll call it easy as pie exclamation. Make about 10 seconds long, hit OK. Okay, so we just need to start off with an ellipse, and so if you go hit Q on the keyboard, and you can cycle through to get to that ellipse tool, and I'm just gonna, usually it'll have a fill when you first start it. You might have a stroke just depending on what you've done recently. So I'm just gonna draw an ellipse, and then I always like to just click on the layer, hold Command, and then double click on the pan behind tool just to make sure that the anchor point gets centered up. And then you can go to align and then just align it into the center. Okay, so we don't want to fill. We want to basically use the stroke as a way to draw this pie chart. And so you can just go up to your fill and then just make sure there's no fill, and then just make sure you have a stroke of some sort. Okay, so you can, basically try to make the stroke as big as it goes to, make a full circle, but then you get into some other issues, but it's really pretty easy to get this how we want. So if you just twirl down the ellipse and then go to ellipse path, you basically want to make sure the size is the exact same size as the stroke. And so just for simplicity's sake, I'm going to go 300, and then for the stroke, make it 300. Okay, so now we need to add trim paths to this. We'll go to add and then go down to trim paths. And so this is basically going to draw our pie chart like so, and you can see how that's working. And so now, it'll be pretty easy to animate this. Let's go ahead and go to about 10 frames. We'll add a keyframe at 0% for end. Move forward to about 2 seconds, put all the way up to 100. We'll ease that. Go into the graph editor. I'll just ease it up a bit at the beginning. I'll really smooth it out at the end, something like that. Just a nice dynamic draw on for this pie chart. Looks great. We'll go forward to about 5 seconds, add another keyframe for the end. Go forward to about 6 seconds and 10 frames, put it down to 0. And we can go back to the graph editor, really eased at the beginning. A little bit of smoothness at the end. Looks great. Okay, we can always, change up those animations. All right, so that's our animation. Now we need to set up some controllers so we can make this easier to control, inside of Premiere Pro as well as even in After Effects. And so I'm going to add an overall size adjustment to this, just so we're not having to constantly change up the sizes for all the different slices of this pie chart once we get those other ones in there. So I'm going to rename this just to pie chart, I guess. And then I'm going to go up to Effect, scroll down to Expression Controls, and add a slider control. I'm going to call this Pie Size. And now I need to just link the size and the stroke width to that slider. So I can just grab the pick whip, go to the slider, the same for the stroke width. And you'll notice you don't see anything right now because this is set to 0, so I'll just set this to 300. And we have our size control, and you can make it smaller, you can make it bigger. You can see that the proportions stay exactly the same. So that's exactly what we want, and it makes it really super easy to change up the size. And once we get all the other slices in there, it'll make it even more easy. I'm gonna go ahead and call this slice_1. Okay, so now let's set up a color control for this. So we'll go up to Effect, need to make sure this is selected, go up to Effect, Expression Controls, and then do Color Control. And we need to just link the color of the stroke to that color control. I'm going to call this slice color _1. And I just need to drag that pick whip up to that color, and we should be good to go. You can see that we don't see any change, but if you start changing this color, you'll start to get other colors in there. All right, so lastly, we need to add an expression control so that we can control the overall size of the slice, but still retain the animation, because we want the animation to stay as is, but we just want to basically control the size of it without affecting the animation. So we can kind of trick After Effects and Premiere into doing this. So we just need to twirl this down, twirl down that slice one, and we'll just add another trim paths. And so we'll just go to trim paths, and there'll be a trim paths 2. We just need to make sure that it's underneath the other one. So we'll just pull that one up there. Maybe we'll change this one to 1 and we'll call the other one 2 just for simplicity. And so this second one is going to kind of function as an override for the other one. So it's going to retain its animation relative to whatever the size of the second one is. So you can see it goes to 100%. But if I move this one down, you can see now it's at a different percentage, even though we retain that exact same animation relative to that override control. So that's going to make it super easy to really change up the size of our slices once we get into Premiere or even in After Effects. And so what we need to do now is add another controller up here. So we'll go to Effect, Expression Controls, Slider Control. I'm going to call this one Slice size _1. And the reason I'm doing the _1 at the end is so when I duplicate these, it'll iterate the number. It'll make it easier to keep everything in line. Okay, so now we just need to link up that end control to that slice size 1. You can see it goes down to 0 because it's set to 0. So if we put up to 100, we should now have the full slice. And if we start dragging that down, we're now controlling that size. Makes it super simple. And so now we're in pretty good shape. Okay, so now we need to create our other slices since we already have all this done. And so now what we want to do is just duplicate this 3 more times with Command D. So Command D, Command D, Command D. We should get 4 slices. We need to do the same thing for the color one and size one. So just Command D, Command D, Command D, and you can see it iterated all those numbers. And so that should work pretty well. You might have noticed that nothing really changed because, first of all the colors are the same, but also all the sizes are the same. But even if we start changing up the sizes, we don't see any difference. And the reason for that is because these other ones are just a duplicate of this first one, so they're all looking at this color one and the size one. So we just need to change those up. But before we do that, let's go ahead and just set these different values so that when we actually change these things up, we'll see the difference. So I'm just going to kind of change these up to different values. I'm going to select some different colors. If you're looking for great colors, be sure to visit color.adobe.com. You can find lots of different color palettes and you can integrate them directly into your libraries, which is great. I created this library called pie charts, and so let's say I liked this color palette right here, or this one. All I have to do is click on this little add to library, and you'll get a little notification eventually that it added it to the library. There you go. And so now when I move back to After Effects, and if I pull up my libraries, go to pie charts, you can see I now have that color theme right in there. No more placing color palettes inside of the canvas, and so that's really easy. So I'm just going to change this one to that. All right, so now we need to start linking all of these things up to these different ones. Let's just make sure this is locked off so it will always stay there. I'm going to twirl down Slice 2, and then twirl down the stroke here. And I just need to pick whip this color and just go up to that color right there. And once we do that for all the other ones, we'll start to see some difference here. And so for the trim paths 2, we need to change that to slice size 2. And we'll basically repeat this process for the other ones as well. All of our changes have been made, and as we start to adjust these sliders, we have all these controls, changing up exactly as we expect, and so it makes it super simple to really kind of modify this as we go along. And of course, the best part is the animation is still built in, and so we have that animation already built in. We don't have to touch anything else with it. And these colors are maybe a bit too bold for me, so I'm going to go to a different color palette that I have. All right, so that might be a little bit easier to look at. Okay, so we have basically our animation all set up, we have our colors all set up, and we have all this control that's easy to do. And so I can change up the pie size, I can change up the different slice sizes. That one will probably always stay 100, but all these other ones are very easy to control. Okay, now let's go ahead and get some text in there. You can see in this earlier example, I have some text animation in here. And so we're going to basically be setting up our text layers to also animate on, but also to dynamically change based on the values of these slices. And so that's going to be pretty cool. Just to kind of expedite things, let's go ahead and I'm going to copy this over. And so I'm just going to paste this in there. And it's probably not going to like me because I have all these expressions on it. So I'm just going to get rid of those expressions for right now. Okay, so we have our text here, and it just has this very simple scale on bounce effect, and then it kind of scales off in the same way. I'm not going to really deal with the different with that aspect of it, but basically what we want to do is kind of the same process. I want to set up the text layer to be able to control the text color. I want to be able to control the value based on the size of the slice that it's related to, and I also want to be able to change up the position based on where the slices are. And so I'm going to probably have to manually do that, but that'll be okay. Okay, so what I want to do here is create a new null, Command-Shift-Alt-Y, and this is going to basically be a control layer to hold all these expression controls for the text. And so I'm just going to call this text control. And I want to start by adding, let's go ahead and unlock that, and I'm going to add another expression. And let's start with just the color for the text. So we'll go to expression controls and then go to color control. I'm going to call this text color _1. And I'm going to go ahead and just change it to that kind of purplish color. And with text layers, it's usually easier to add a fill to it and then use that to generate the color, just because otherwise you're going to run into issues with keyframing and stuff like that. So I'm just going to go up to Effect and then go to Generate and then go down to Fill. That'll add a fill to this. And basically I just need to, it looks like it already has a fill. So this fill, I just need to link up to my text control here. So I'm just going to lock that off and then twirl this down, go to that fill, and just link that up right there. All right, so now I also want to be able to adjust the position of this text, because as these slices move around or have different values, it might not line up as nicely as I have right here. So what I want to do with this is, on my text control layer, I need to create a point control. So I'm going to go to Effect, scroll down to Expression Controls, and then choose Point Control. And I'm just going to call this text POS _1, text position 1. And so my points can be right there. Now what I'm going to do is just zero out these. They might be like at 50 and 50. You just want to make sure there's 0 and 0 just to make it kind of easier to understand. And then what I need to do is go to my text here, hit P to pull up the position property. I'm just going to pick whip this and go to that point right there. And you'll notice it's not lining up. And so what's happening here is the value for this position 0, 0 is related to this layer right here. And so the 0, 0 is right there in the center. However, for the text layer, for whatever reason, the 0, 0 position is up here in the corner. And so we basically just need to add something to that expression to tell it to put it to put it here in the center as the 0, 0. So what I need to do is just go into, twirl this down, go to this position property. We have our expression control here. I just need to add a plus here, and then do a left bracket, and I'm going to do 540, 540. And so this is basically telling it to put it at 540, go plus 540 pixels from the left edge, plus 540 from the top. And so since this composition is 1080 by 1080, I just want to do half of both of those values. And so once I click out of that, you should see it, line up in the center. And now as I move these position values around, I can move my text around. So I'm just going to move this over here, move it up there. And so once we get into Premiere, we'll be able to still move our text around as we need to. But as always, that animation is still there, so that's really great. All right, so let's go ahead and duplicate our text here. So I'll just call this text 1, and then I'll duplicate it with Command D to do text 2, and I'm just going to duplicate it a couple more times. Okay, and the value right now doesn't matter. So for this text 2, I'm going to make that one down here, I think, just to make it simpler. And you can see nothing's really happening. I also need to duplicate these a couple times, so we'll get up through text 1, 2, 3, 4, just like that. And now we need to link these to the different things here. So I'm going to go ahead and change up these colors real quick. Okay, so now we need to twirl this to, I'll just hit double E, and I just need to change this from text color 1 to text color 2. And I need to change the position 1 to position 2. And then I'm just going to do the exact same thing for all these other ones. So double E, change this one to text color 3. So now we just need to move our, text layers around here using these position controls. You can see if you try to move the actual layer, it's not going to do anything because it's linked up via expression. And so we're just going to move these around like so. And then I'll move that one over move it up, and you can see how the position of the slice might change up where I want my text, which is why we're doing this. Okay, so the last thing we need to do is to get these values to be linked to the actual size of these slices. So let's start with this one right here. So what we need to do is twirl this down to the actual text layer. And what we're going to do also for this is go to the pie chart right here and make sure that that one is locked off so we have access to these values. Let's start by alt-clicking on it. Let's do math, capital math dot round. And then it's going to give us, we need to do a left bracket, or a left parentheses, and then we want to pick whip the slice size 1, so that'll give us that 100%. And if we kind of click out of it, you can see, we have 100, but we don't actually want 100. We want whatever this value would be. And so we need to subtract this. We need to subtract this value from this value. So now we'll go in between these two brackets, do minus, and then pick whip the slice size 2. And so 100 minus 79 should be 21%, and so we should have that 21%. Now all we need to do is go past that second bracket, do a plus, and then do quotation marks, add the percentage symbol, and it should give us the percentage at the end. And now as we change up this value, you can see that value changes really nicely. Okay, and since it's also linked up to this value, as we change this value, that one should change as needed. So we're going to do the exact same process with text too. I'll just walk you through all of these just so you can see how it works. All right, so we'll alt-click on this. We'll do capital math dot round. The reason we're doing this is to make sure that it rounds it up to the nearest whole number. We'll do left parentheses, and we want to pick whip slice size 2, and then we'll do subtract, and we'll do pick whip slice size 3, and at the very end, plus parentheses, or sorry, quotation marks, and then percentage, and that should give us 26%, which that looks quite right. And you can see as I move this one, the other one moves with it, which is exactly what we want, so that's perfect. All right, so now we want to do the same thing with text 3, and again, I'll just walk through this to make it pretty obvious what we're doing. So alt-click, and once again, capital math dot round, left parentheses, we will pick whip slice size 3, and then do minus, pick whip slice size 4, go to the very end, plus quotation marks, percentage, boom, 39%, that looks right. And then for the last one, we just need to twirl that down, alt-click, and once again, capital math dot round, left parentheses, and then we'll pick whip slice size 4. And since we don't have anything to subtract this one from, we just want to do minus 0. And then we'll go to the end, and we'll do plus quotation marks, parentheses, or percentage. We have 14%. And so now you can see as we change these things up, everything's changing together, and our values are all being calculated for us. So we don't actually have to do anything. The animation is still intact. And so it's pretty awesome, and I think we're pretty much good to go with this. Perfect. Okay, so that's basically all of our expressions that we need for this. And so now we can set up our motion graphics panel to be able to use these inside of Premiere Pro. And this is one of the most powerful interactions between After Effects and Premiere. I use this all the time for like the tutorials and things like that. It really allows you to create pretty complex animations and set up all these different things so that you can modify them in Premiere without ever having to get back into After Effects. All right, so let's look at how to get this working with the motion graphics panel. So what you want to do is just make sure your composition is selected and go up to what the master is, and so it's this easy as pie. I'll just call it new pie chart, exclamation. Okay, so now we need to start adding properties to this essential graphics panel. So I'm going to start by going down to the pie chart here, and I'm going to twirl down the effects here. And so we basically want to add most of these effects to this thing right here. So I'm going to go to this pie size and just drag that slider, and I can call this size. And if I start changing this, you can see I can change the size, and you can edit the range of this slider if you want to. I'll just make it be able to go to 1,000, and so now I can use this slider more easily, exactly like that, and so it works exactly as we want to. And now I'll just start twirling down some of these other ones and just drag up the colors here. So now you just choose what text you want it to be called, and so I'll just call this color 1. All right, so you can also add some groups to make this easier. So you can go to add group. I might just call this slice color. And then you can just add these into that group, and it makes it a little more tidy inside of the panel. And so you can twirl it down if you want to. Okay, now we need to go to the size, and so I'm just gonna twirl this down for all of these. And remember, this is our override for the size, and so I'm just gonna drag these up there. All right, now we need to go up to our text control and add those properties in there. So I'm just gonna kind of go through this again. And we're pretty much good to go with this. And so everything's set up and we're ready to save this out. So you just wanna make sure your project is saved. And then you wanna go to Export Motion Graphics Template. It's gonna go through a little process. It's gonna ask you where you want to save it. I usually like to save it into libraries just so it's easy to access in Premiere. So you can choose your destination library. I'm gonna use this pie charts one that I did, hit OK. It's gonna go through the process and you'll pretty much see it over here. You can see this new pie chart right here. And so now I'm gonna jump over to Premiere. Okay, so now I'm gonna go to my Essential Graphics panel, and you can see it just populated right there. So it's almost instantaneous, which is awesome. And so now you can just drag that and drop it into your project. You can ask what you wanna do if you have different sizes. And so it's going to basically put it in there. I have my animated pie chart with all the different properties, all the animations there. That's great. But what's really amazing about this is now I can just click on this. I can come over to the edit panel here. I can change up the size. You can see that. I could also, of course, link these text sizes to that size control so they would all move together if I want to. I just wanted to make this as quick as possible. I can change up these slice colors if I want to. So I could, change that color, make it look terrible. I can go down to the size and change up the size of these. I mean, this one's probably always going to be 100%, but I'll just leave it 100 so I can change up the different slice sizes just like that. And so it's really super awesome, and it's really keeping all these values exactly as they should be. And yeah, I can't ask for more. You can go to the text color, change up the text color, exactly the same. And I just made it terrible. You can also change up the text position as needed just by moving the text position sliders around. And so the great thing too is if I wanted to use this again, I could just alt click and drag this over here as another one, and I can make any changes that I needed to. Let's say I wanted to change up the different sizes and things like that. This one is actually independent from the other one, so I could make all kinds of different changes and they're going to be independent, and I'm not going to mess up anything. So it makes it really super easy to create really pretty complex motion graphics templates for use in both After Effects and Premiere, and you can use them inside of Premiere without ever having to go back inside of After Effects. For example, a lot of times when I'm making these tutorials, let me go to one of my other libraries here. I've made like this intro that I use for this. Let me just drop it in here real quick. And I might need to scale it down a bit. And so it has different properties here, like it has the different text that I can change up. And so you can see I have these text things that I can change up, the different lines. I can even change up the size. I can change up the font, all that kind of stuff. I also have these icons that I usually put in to show what program is being used. I have it set up so I can change up the different programs that I'm using, and all the animations intact. And so there's just tons of different ways you can use these motion graphics templates. And a pie chart is a pretty easy example, but also pretty powerful, as you can see, just with all the different properties you can link up inside of After Effects and then modify inside of Premiere Pro. So that's about it. I hope this is helpful to you, and you can see there's just tons of stuff you can do with these motion graphics templates inside of After Effects. So be sure to check it out, create some fun stuff, and I will talk to you later.